My name is Bilha, B-I-L-H-A, last name Ron, R-O-N. My maiden name was Zachori, or in Hebrew, Tzchori. It is Z-E-H-O-R-I. I was born in 1930 in Israel. At that time we call it Eretz Israel. We don't use the expression Palestine, never. Always, when I came to the United States, I could not believe the Jewish people say Palestine. We always call it Eretz Israel. I was born in Ra'anana. That was a very small village at the time, and now it's a big city, a beautiful city. And Yarkona was just nothing but a swamp. A big swamp that they drained the swamp and tried and planted oranges, and the Jewish National Fund gave this land to a group of Jewish immigrants that came. My parents came from the Ukraine. My mother came from a little town called Frampol when she was like 20 years old in 1920. And my father came from Smotrich. They left. My father comes from a very, very large family. There were 9 boys and 1 girl. He said goodbye to his parents, to his mother. When she let him go, he was a young boy that left Europe after the revolution and just saw that the Bolshevik are as bad as it was before. Anti-Semitism was so strong. And so they both decided time for them to leave Ukraine. They met each other in Israel. My mother comes from a very wealthy family and my father came from a poor family. They met each other in Petach Tikva, where they were building the roads there in 1922. And there were 50 men and 2 girls. And the men were planting the orange groves at that time near Petach Tikva. Orange was, that area was very good for raising orchard for oranges and all kind of citrus. The women were taking care of cooking and cleaning and dancing with the guys at night. It was the most marvelous stories they were telling about the time of the Chalutzim, the pioneers that came to Israel in the 1920s. They called them the Aliyah Shlishit, the 3rd immigration. Even I was born in Ra'anana. After 2 years, I was 2 years old and my parents already had 1 child that was born to them when they worked in Mikveh Israel, which was agricultural school. And they were not teachers there, but they were taking care of, my father was again planting the orange groves and became a very big expert on citrus raising and well known. He was like a citrus doctor. He knew how to take care of citrus and raising this all over the country. They knew about him. When my brother Moshe was born 5 years before I was born. So I was born 1930, and when I was 2 years old, they received land from JNF. I returned to the story, how we settled in Yarkona. Yarkona, it's named after the Yarkon River. It was not a river. It's a small river, not Mississippi. It's a small river that at the time, the water did not flow all the way from the mountain, from the Mount of Ephraim, all the way to the sea because of sand dunes stopped all the exit. That's why so many swamps were in that area. They drained the swamps and they planted trees and they received the land in Yarkona. And I have some photograph. You see nothing but barren land. You see some picture later that you see me and my brother sitting on a little donkey. And they see the hut that they built there, like a wooden home that I lived there until my parents lived a brick house when I was 9 years old. I have many memories that I will tell about that particular period of going in Yarkona. Yarkona had 35 families. They all were immigrants that came from Poland and Russia. A couple came from Germany, and that was in the 30s that they start to build this moshav. They did not receive from the JNF enough land to really make a living from agriculture, but they love this. What they have, 14 dunams. It's not much, and they mostly planted oranges. But we had, people had cows and goats, and we had many chickens. We raised chicken, and we have variety of fruit trees in the yard. In the meantime, I was very bright child, and we had kindergarten in the Moshav, and then the school was regional school in Kfar Malal, which was next to us, and a bus will take us, maybe it was 5 miles, to Kfar Malal. Kfar Malal was another Moshav, not much bigger, and we had wonderful teachers. The teachers were like unbelievable because they came from Europe. My main teacher was one by the name was Moshe Schlanger. He was my teacher in the 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade. All these years in the same school, and remember that those are the years that the war started. I was 9 years old and the war starts, and Moshe Schlanger came from Europe, from Poland, and he was a poet, and he introduced us to the life that used to be in Europe. And I will mention many names of writers and poets that, and the Bible, that he inculcated in us such love for the Bible, it became a part of my life. He taught us all the poetry of Bialik, Chaim Nachman Bialik, the poet laureate of Hebrew language was started to develop. All we spoke is Hebrew. Even my parents came from Russia, from the Ukraine, and their native language was Yiddish and Russian. My mother even went to high school in Ukraine. I can never hear them speak, not Yiddish and not Russian, except my mother will sing me. She had a beautiful voice. She sang to me Russian songs, and I heard words that I picked up. In Yiddish, I picked up a lot of Yiddish in the street, in the talk from different people. And the life in the Moshav, we all became like one family. There were not many children my age. And so I had a wonderful friend that was my age, was Tova, and one was Hannah. That's all that we had, because a small 30 families, but we all like related to each other. And we had one little grocery store. I mentioned this teacher because he's a connection to the literature and the new Hebrew literature that came out. And the life in Poland introduced us what's happening in the war in Europe. And we were aware what's going on. And we wrote, he had invented that each one of us created like a friend, a cousin, or a friend in Warsaw. And as the war developed and there was the Warsaw Uprising, we absolutely lived through it. We wrote letters to each other. We wrote a letter to our friend in Warsaw and wrote the answers, because we knew it from the papers. I think my attachment to the whole subject of the Holocaust brought me to marry this guy for 70 years, that I married a survivor. Because in 1946, when they started to come, the survivors, I will come to explain more what happened. Mm-hmm. But that's how I became so attached to this group of survivors with my interest, and that's how I ended up married one of them.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Now. You have a friend that in the Warsaw ghetto?
Imaginary friend. Imaginary friend.
Oh, I see. These letters.
These letters were to imaginary friend or a cousin. I forgot already the name of that friend.
How did you find out about?
From the newspaper. Every day we knew what's going on in the war, mm-hmm. and we used it in those letters. He used the same type.
You're about 10, 11 years old when this is
was nine when the war starts.
Right.
But I was much older later on, because it was until 1940. He was my teacher, mm-hmm. until 1944. until almost toward the end of the year. So much happened in between. See? Okay, I want to go back to what we learned and what happened in Yarkona.
Okay.
I would go to the regional school to Kfar Malal, and we learned, I told you, at Bialik, I mentioned name. Some people that maybe see this video will know who I'm talking about. Shaul Chernyakhovsky. I mean, we memorize these things. Shin Shalom, Shalom Ash, all these, and the literature of Shalom Aleichem, Mendele Mocher Sfarim, and then some of the modern Israeli writers, but they are just was the beginning, the Hebrew language just beginning to flower. And the British were at that time in control, and at age 14, when I was age 14, that was in my last year in high school, in elementary school in Kfar Malal. We were recruited to the Haganah. You know, that was, you know what Haganah?
Tell me.
Haganah means defense. But we were attacked by Arabs when I was 3 years old and when I was 9 years old. There were attacks upon Yarkona, our village. We were very close to the border. Where is Yarkona? Yarkona is 20 miles north of Tel Aviv on the old road to Haifa. And the Arabs were surrounded. I could see the Arab villages from my bedroom across. I could hear the pump of the water pump from the orange grove that belonged to the Arabs on the hill.
So let me say, for people that don't know, Israel at this time was not
Not a state,
today.
under
This
the
was
British mandate.
But you had Arab villages and
Arab villages all
Jewish
over.
villages.
And Jewish villages side by side. In time when we were friendly, the Arabs will come in. I remember when I was 4 years old, Arab would come to, my father had pigeon, doves. He had everything. We had in the farm, it was like everything you can imagine, every trees, and we had goats, and we had one cow, and we have a donkey, and one horse. But mostly the living we made from his work in the citrus, working for a company.
So give me a relationship between the experiences between the Arab neighbors.
And I'll tell you, yes, so the Arab will come to sell us this pigeon. I remember Omar, his name, Omar. He would come, he put me on his knees, and he was so friendly. And my father, he would bring him to sell us the doves, and he raised the pigeons, you know, my father. And time of peace, they will come in the street to sell us vegetables, and they will call in Yiddish, Igarkes, you know, he was calling in Yiddish and going in and selling there. We had a wonderful relation with them. And then one day they will attack, and they will shoot. My father was commander of the Haganah, of the defense. And there was somewhere, when I was 9 years old, I remember that they brought guns that came from Czechoslovakia, from the Skoda company. And we called all the kids, when I was 9 years old, 1939. And we were cleaning the guns, and we didn't know where they take them. Years later, many years later, we found that one of my neighbors, under his goat shed, there was the biggest assembly of guns and ammunition for the Haganah. Haganah was illegal at that time. And we, at age 14, we were called, the girls and boys, to swear to the Haganah. We put our hand on a gun and on the Bible, see that is a Bible, on the Bible, and we swore that the British were looking, because they would try, if they catch you, you'll go to jail. Because the Arabs were attacking all over the place, and we had to be prepared to defend ourselves. You know, my commanders, and when I was 14, was Ariel Sharon, later became Prime Minister, and was the leader and the big hero of the wars. And he was my commander. We were 7 girls. This is history. 7 girls. He was only 2 years older than us. We were 14, he was 17, 3 years older. And he was teaching us to shoot a gun, to throw hand grenade in case. and mostly we learn first aid. Now, I told you the influence of my teacher. We studied in the school. Bible was number one, Hebrew literature number two, and we learned English. In the meantime, the war goes on. In the beginning, we had good relations with the British, and British soldiers will come to our village sometime for Shabbat. One would be in our house because the tension started so much when the news came from Europe. This I have to be very careful so whoever hears me will understand what I'm saying. As the war developed and the British put a white paper and refused to let immigrants come, only a small number could come with certificate, and refused and put in the white paper the Jews are not allowed to sell land, to buy land from Arabs. Arabs will not sell any land because the land was bought. When we settled all the kibbutzim and the kibbutz and moshavs, all of them were bought by money from the JNF, Jewish National Fund, collected money in America, in the world, and bought land from Arabs or from the government. They paid for this land, and so they forbade for the Arabs will not sell any more land. So the tension became more and more between the British, even though as the war developed, and they would not let the immigrants come. And we knew that they are dying in the camps in Europe. We start to hear the news from 1940, even before, like Kristallnacht. We knew what happened in 1938. We knew what's happening in Europe from the news. We knew because of the family were in Europe. My father brought one brother from his family of 10. He brought one brother to Israel, Pinchas, that settled in another moshav and had a family. The rest of them remained in Europe. In 1942, when the Nazis came to the Ukraine, they killed all of them. My mother did not have cousin, a brother, a sister. There were 5 people in her family. They killed her parents. They killed my father's family. There were from all this huge family of generations that lived there, was left one brother and his wife that happened to be, he was in the Russian army, and she was visiting her mother in Moscow, and with 2 little children. They are the only one left from this family. All the people in Yarkona, all their families were in Poland or in Russia, and 2 in Germany, 2 families. We did not see a grandfather or a grandmother. We didn't have relatives. We did not know what is to come. There were no relatives. Only our family and maybe an uncle, sometime this one or a couple of cousins.
How did you find out what happened?
Oh my goodness, how we found out. First of all,
you don't have television.
We did not.
Radio.
I want to tell you about one moment. Really, I have stories, so many stories. No wonder that I ask you, can we do it in an hour? No, we will not do it in an hour. Because there are so many stories to tell, how we found out. In 1945, the war was over. And one day, I told you that the family from Smotrich and Frampol, they came from the Ukraine, 2 little shtetl, not far, for people that watch this film, it's not far from they call it Kamenets-Podolsk gubernia, the region of Kamenets-Podolsk. That was the big city next to these small shtetl. You hardly find them on the map today. We have a map that marked these 2 shtetl. And the Jewish people that came from those shtetl created in Israel a community, they call it Landsmannschaft, people that come from the same land, Landsmannschaft. And they will come together, the people from Smotrich and Frampol. One day they came together and came a girl 16 years old that escaped from a pit, that she was shot with the rest of them. She crawled out from the pit. She was alive. And somehow she came through the illegal immigration, which is another big story to tell. She came and I was in a meeting when she told all these people gathered in Tel Aviv in a one room, and she said to them, "You don't have families anymore." They all were buried in mass grave, all of them. Maybe you'll find one here and one there. I don't think, she told my mother, "There's nobody left from your family." She came from my mother's town. No one left, no one. All the people, men, women, children, all young, there's nobody left from her family. Mm-hmm. So really, I tell you, the Holocaust, if somebody said people didn't know, they know. I can tell you for myself and how I knew. I really, and simple people, and I tell you, I asked my father. My father lived to be 94, my mother died when she was 82. I asked my father, I remember that day when this woman told you, I did not see any crying, any screaming, any fainting. There was just silence. How could it be? He said, we were in such a shock. We just could not even react. It was beyond human emotion. We just could not, we cannot even describe. All I can tell you, that after that day, my mother's face turned to sadness. She was really, there was sadness in her face all the time. And they didn't talk about it. That is the truth. They didn't talk about it. I'm coming back now. It's 1944, and I am finishing my elementary school, where I was a very good student, and I knew I want to be a teacher. This teacher, Moshe, I wrote about him, and sometime, if we have time, I can read something, what I said about him. His love, the love of Bible that he gave me, and the way I teach Bible here too. Mm-hmm. I teach it not for them, for me, because I love so much, and when I teach, I see Moshe, my teacher, the way he stood, and the way we wrote, what I wrote is homework. What every character that in the Bible stood before me, like if I lived there, and people that take my class, they say, "You are there. You take us with you to see Moses, to see Samuel, to see King David. You take, because I felt I was there." Because we also wrote, creative writing was as if we are there, One homework I remember that became very well known, that I wrote something so spectacularly good, was if I would be Prophet Jeremiah. He was punished and he was put like in jail. And I was Jeremiah, what I'm thinking, how I know what he was thinking, because of the way he spoke, because his writing and his saying in the book of Jeremiah was so alive for me. This way, and more, I don't want to take time, there's too much to tell. Mm-hmm. I come now back to 1944. The war is horrible, the news of the camps we hear, we all try. Israel is doing all kind of things to try to reach up to Europe. They send paratroopers, and the friction with the British is so tight, so hard. There is a Jewish brigade that organized by the British. When the German came to, this is a very important part for history. When the German came to North Africa, they came to El Alamein, close to Egypt, on the desert from Tunisia. And they had big battles with the British there, and the Jewish brigade, Jewish people that volunteered from Yarkona. There were two also, the one man and one young boy, 1-year boy, Matityahu Rosin, that volunteered to the brigade. Matityahu never returned. He was drowned in a boat that was shipped to Europe from the brigade that was hit by a mine. Mm-hmm. So Matityahu never returned. And the other one, Yofe, he did return, but he was captured.
So you tell me about the German battle.
We are off now, right?
Yes, you're on now.
On?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I say the German came to El Alamein, mm-hmm. and the news, and in the north, that the French army under Pétain, that was those that collaborated with the Germans, mm-hmm. came in Lebanon, into Syria and Lebanon. So Israel here was what Eretz Israel, what you call, you know. In the north was Lebanon, and the Germans or the French pro-German Petain were there, and in the south, which was Egypt in the south, it was very close already coming to Cairo, you know, on El Alamein. The big battle was in El Alamein. That's the spot when the Germans started to lose the war. But in Israel, we were prepared for the conquest by the Nazis. You can imagine the fear and the preparation. Everybody was supposed to prepare like we prepare a big hole, like I would call it, not a bunker, but a big hole that in case of bombing that we will hide there. Mm-hmm. I remember it was it was that size, like big, that a family could go into, just hide from bombing. As far the conquer, I tell you, in the school, we used to read chapters from the book of Isaiah. If I would prepare for it, I would even show you, where it says the enemy will come from the north and will come from the south, but the big battle they will lose. They will not able to take this holy land, okay? I mean, that is ridiculous to be relying on this thing, but I remember that we read it in the school. By the way, I went to a school that was secular, not religious. Mm-hmm. We learned Bible, we learned about Jewish holidays, we learned the Haggadah for Passover. We knew Jewish history very well. I was very interested, but we were not religious. Mm-hmm. And even the Bible was taught in such a way, not in a religious way. Mm-hmm. I teach it in the same way. I mean, you want to believe everything was done from God? Mm-hmm. Okay, if you think, I don't want to go into that topic, you know, but still, when we talk about the story of Jericho, the conquest of the land, it's still, we just absorb it as the natural thing. This happened. Mm-hmm. This is the story, that's the tale of our people. So here we come to the war with the German. They start to lose the war in El Alamein. They lost the war also near in Lebanon. And really, in that time, it was 1942 when this happened, and the war started to change, and the
was it in 42 or 44?
I know it was in 42.
Okay.
In 42, the El Alamein. Mm-hmm. And the war started to retreat, mm-hmm. and go back, and the German, Rommel, that was the battle with Rommel, mm-hmm. you know, that was the German commander, and he lost the battle, and later he was executed by the German because he lost the battle. And then the German invaded Russia, and it was Stalingrad. Mm-hmm. The whole thing started to change, and we go to 1943. For the Jews, still they were in Hungary, and they were in 1944. All the Jews of Hungary were sent away. So the war was still going horribly, and the Americans joined the war in 42. Mm-hmm. That kind of changed after a while. How we prepared at home, we baked bread. There was limits but because we were in a farm, and we had chicken and eggs and fruit and oranges and we had everything you want. We used to bring to the people in Tel Aviv. We used to bring to them basket of eggs and chicken, and the British were checking this out on the way, and if they could confiscate if you smuggle this, like we didn't sell them, we brought a friend to it, so they will have to eat. So when we go to Tel Aviv, I started to go to Teachers College in 1945. After 44, I finished my 8th grade, elementary school, mm-hmm. and the Levinsky Teachers College was a high school and college in the same building on the Yarkon Street. I was so happy. It was such a wonderful thing to go to Teachers College. And I remember that my teachers wrote, Bilha was born to be a teacher. Yeah, born to be a teacher. I really did. It was my field of interest, and I was teaching from very early age. Mm-hmm. From very early age, I used to volunteer to substitute teachers in the school. Okay. I don't know. I want to. Most important thing I want to tell you in 1948. I don't
Before
want.
we get to 48.
Yeah, because it's an hour we are talking.
It's okay. 1945.
Yeah,
Now,
1945.
has the war ended yet?
The war ended in 1945.
So we're talking after the war is when you started.
I started. No. I started still in 1940. Well, I started in I think 1944, maybe 45. To Teachers College, yes,
Okay,
it was.
okay.
I had wonderful teacher. We had 60 students, mostly girls and 2 boys.
So
it
when
was
the war ends,
yes.
what did the British do as far as Israel? Anything at this
They
point?
were terrible. They would not let immigrants come, and we brought them through the Haganah illegally. That comes the story of Sam, my husband, Shmuel Rakowski. He survived the Holocaust, and he was in 5 different camps. His story, you might want to take it separately. And
the British wouldn't let anybody come into Israel?
there would be very limited certificates. So the war ended, and all these refugees, broken up people, children that were in monasteries, and they brought them illegally in illegal boats. You probably remember they will catch them with them, the British will catch them, and we in the Haganah try to bring them illegally in. Smuggle them in. Yeah, I remember.
So
I was in the Haganah,
What did you do?
and only one time, I had a role that I got a note. I was in Tel Aviv, studying in Tel Aviv. I had to go from Yarkona to Tel Aviv every day. I would leave in the morning when it was dark. I would see foxes running back and forth in the orange groves. There were orange groves, and there was a path, not even a road, to go to the bus. And fox will go. I could hear them, the sound of foxes. Ooh, ooh. They will go, and I will go in the morning in the dark. Afternoon, I worked in the Red Cross or Magen David Adom at the station, and I was trained as a first aid nurse. Okay, nurse, first aid, and in the Red Cross, I will come home. So that was the time. But my brother, 5 years older than I am, he was one of the commanders of the Haganah. He will leave in the evening at night, and he will come in the morning all wet. What happened? Where you been? Never heard from him. Years later, he would tell how they will go and meet a little boat. They will swim to a boat, and they will, on their back, will swim with people to the shore. Refugees that came from the camp.
People were coming on big boats.
On little boats at night and jumping in the water. That was, you call it the bricha, or the illegal immigration to Israel, or some call it aliyah bet, immigration bet, like bet.
If he would actually pull people.
If they catch him, he will go to jail, and they send ships back. Later they sent them to Cyprus. You remember?
Right.
Until came the big boat that was organized by United States, took refugees from Europe. They called the Exodus, the ship Exodus. Yeah, they all have Hebrew names too. Yetziat Mitzrayim, Exodus.
Once the war ended, then people were trying
to reach back, yeah,
to the United into Israel.
Those refugees that survived, nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted them. It was a big story until Truman came and he gave permission to 100,000 to come to the United States. That was a big struggle, but I don't want to get off my.
What year was it that Truman allowed?
Truman allowed in 1946 to come. So some of them had a choice, but most of them came to Israel.
So did you have any contact with these refugees that would come?
Oh my goodness, if I had contact. We took them in the house. We took them even during the war. They were smuggled in. They will come. We always had some refugees in our house. Sometimes they even came from Syria. Children come from Syria. They smuggled children from Syria because the Arab world started to go against Israel, against the Jews. Okay, so the Syrian Jews wanted to leave Syria. Jews from North Africa, from Yemen, from all over. Jewish people wanted to come back here. They were coming in every which way. But we are coming close to the time, and then there was the illegal terrorist groups like the Etzel that attacked British. The tension with the British was so serious. On that, I cannot talk about it so fast, because there was so much to tell about what the nuances of this battle, the different groups. There's so much happened during that period, but I want to tell you about the war and what happened after the United Nations decided the partition. I mean, this was such a high drama.
What is the partition?
Yeah, the partition. And there were so many different groups, different committees that come to see how we settle the Palestinian Jewish issue.
Right.
There were one after another. I cannot go to one to another.
I mean, what did they mean by partition?
Yeah, okay. All the time they thought we have to separate the people. So they take the map of Israel, and there was this map and this map. And there was one point when the British came to United Nations, they said, we have had it. We cannot take care of this issue anymore. Palestine becomes a big problem for us. We want to leave, and it's your problem. Mm-hmm. And they said they are going to leave in 1945, in May 14, they are going, 1947. No, they left in 47, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the United Nations had debates and debates, and I'll tell you, if you read what the Arabs are saying at that time, Saudi Arabia, I have so many books on the topic, and I told you I used to speak about.
So what did the Arabs say about?
So Saudi Arabia delegate said this. I have it here in paper, black and white to see. I see. The Saudi Arabian, in the United Nations, he said, look, we will never accept a Jewish entity in that land. That's an Arab land. We will never accept it. They said, even in 2 million people will have to die. We have many millions of Arabs. 2 million, he said. We will fight until we get this land back. That statement, I remember when he said it. I have it in the books. But he said it. Later on, when the terrorism started, you mentioned the Intifada, you see. Before it was Fadayin and Arafat. There was so much going on. All the time, attacks upon. Again, I told you, when I was 3 years old, my mother said, when they start shooting, you take this pillow and lie behind the pillow in front of you. I remember, first memory, I remember lying in a pillow because they were shooting. The border was so close, the Arab village was so close. Mm-hmm. When I was 9 years old in 1939, that's when the war started. That was a big pogroms, you know, they attacked all over, everywhere. I remember they killed one woman in our village. That was the first one that died. The second one that died was this boy that went on the ship, you know, from the brigade, Jewish brigade. And the British left, the day the British left, okay, the United Nations voted on partition to divide the land. You have to see a map to tell you how they divide. Where there are majority of Jews is Jewish land, where majority of Arab is Arab land. The Jewish part was divided, this part and this part, it's like pockets. But we celebrated and we danced and days and night, and we were so happy. I was already, it was 1948, in May 14, when, I'm sorry, the United Nations was in 1947 in November 27. Mm-hmm. Okay, I remember, but we were dancing and singing and so happy, and my Sam, that I already was like he was not yet my boyfriend, but almost my boyfriend. We were in relationship. He already settled in the Negev. The first attack in the Negev, in a far away, this he will tell you himself, in a far away from any community, isolated, there were 40 survivors from the Holocaust. 40 survivors. One of them was Israeli. The rest of them were all survivors from Poland and Russia not Russia, Poland. And they were in a kibbutz called Nevatim. They were attacked, and he was wounded. There were only 17 of them there. The rest of them were in another place. 17 of them. They only had one machine gun and a few guns. Sam was wounded. He was manning the machine gun. There was only one building made of bricks, you know, so he was on top of the roof. How I tell you what happened and how he was saved and who saved him, and it's just such a big story. I don't know where to stop and where to start.
Well, he can tell me that.
He will tell you how he was saved and how he came back. We started to really romantically to go. After he was in a hospital, he was in a hospital near the station of the Red Cross where I worked.
After he had been wounded.
After he was wounded, and I came to visit him, and we started. But I was sick only. I was 17 years old, and he was 6 years older than I am. So that was the time of the United Nations decided on the partition, and the British said they are leaving, and they left in 1948 in May 14. Sam was back in the army, and I was in the army. Okay, after his wound was healed, he was back in the army. He was leading convoys in the Negev. I was in the army working in a hospital as a first aid nurse. Just to tell about that period needs a whole hour. What it was, it was not wounded of war that came to that hospital in Kfar, it's called in a place called Kfar Yona. It was all of them survivors from the Holocaust that came on a boat and came sick. Also people that came from North Africa and they were sick. People that were immigrants that were sick came to the hospital. It was not war people, because that was a hospital for sick people.
What was the name of it? Where was it again?
It was in Kfar Yona. Kfar Yona. I was there for 6 months. Later I was moved to be in charge of a clinic inside an orange grove where they train officers. Officer for the Palmach. Okay. After 5 months in that place, we got ordered that all of us, we were from Teachers College. I was already in a teacher in I was already 4 years in the school there, 5 years. They want us to finish quickly, like in one summer, to finish get our degree as educators and go to teach immigrants that came, because there were coming 1 million immigrants. And they needed to learn the language, and there were many children. And so they sent me to be a teacher in a place. I was 19 years old, to be a teacher in Yahud.
Let me stop you for a minute. So, do you have any idea what was the population when the war ended?
And then I will tell you, when the war ended, there were 600,000 Jews during the war, before the war. Jewish people in Eretz Israel, 600,000. The Arabs were maybe 1 million spread in their area.
So the Israel, the part of this new state was 600,000?
Yes, and then 1 million refugees coming.
1 million refugees come.
In a short time, and they were coming by sea and by air and by walking.
And where did they live?
And they put for them.
Who fed them?
Oh my goodness.
What kind of work was there?
Oh, you know, I told you there is so much to tell. So much to tell. Just about 1948, I wished I had an hour to tell you 1948. That was what I most wanted to talk about. I have a pack of letters that I wrote to Sam from my camp where I was in the army, and the letters are history. I like to read a part from this letter. One letter.
Go ahead.
As we are approaching Israel's 70th anniversary, this is when I wrote the story here. If Israel anniversary as an independent state, my memory has been flooded with thoughts about those days in 1948, when I was 18 years old and in Israeli army. I have been looking over old correspondence, and one particular letter caught my attention. It was dated May 14, 1948. One of the daily letters I sent to my then boyfriend, Shmulik, who saved all the correspondence. Shmuel is now my husband. Now it's 70 years. By the way, these are the pack of letters. If you want to take pictures, you see? These are the pack of letters. I was serving as a first aid nurse in a military hospital at Kfar Yona in the central part of Israel. The patients in that place were recent refugees arriving from catastrophe in Europe or from Arab land of North Africa. Shmuel was serving in the Negev, leading army convoys in an armored truck, driving on unpaved roads through the desert without light to avoid the strafing of Egyptian planes. The following is the letter, translated from Hebrew, that I sent that day back in 1948. That is the letter. Dear Shmulik, I hope that this letter will reach you in good health. The news from the Negev is pretty grim. I hear report of daily bombardment of Nir Am and Negba. I can imagine you travel from place to place on these dangerous roads without proper food and rest. I worry about you all the time. Today has been a very sad day in my village. We buried Tzvika Drori, a handsome blonde boy who was only 18 years old. He was the light of his widowed mother. He was the light of his widowed mother's life and the center of her existence. My brother Moshe was his unit commander. It was a miracle that Moshe came home safely. Many of the boys my age are falling in different battles. Several boys from Ra'anana died, and some from Kfar Saba, that's my neighborhood. In spite of all the pain and sacrifice, we are the luckiest generation. We are making history every day. For so many generations, the Jews prayed for such a day, and we had the zechut, the privilege, to see it happen. You and I are facing such dynamic forces of history, and I hope that we will survive and at least see peace in this land. Soon I hope there will be a ceasefire, and I shall return to the teacher's college. Maybe my dream of being a teacher will be accomplished. My work here is very tiring, but most interesting. We are 6 young girls taken from our Levinsky Teachers College to serve as first aid nurses. You remember how I had to take training after school hours for this? The patients are not war wounded, but only sick refugees. When they recover from their illness, they are being sent to battle. Yesterday, we saw one guy who suffered from malaria. He was very tall and handsome man, and he screamed in his sleep from his sleep when he hallucinated from an effect of malaria. It's typhus, it was not malaria, it's typhus. When he recovered, just before he boarded the truck to go to fight, he handed me a note that said, Bilha, he called Bilha, this is my name. I have no family left. If I will not return, no one will know my name. His name was Dov, and he survived the ghetto in Lodz. Shmulik, I can't stop thinking. I really don't know what happened to him. I was too stupid to follow up on what he asked me to do. I don't know if he survived. The battle was in Beersheba. I don't remember. I don't know what happened to him. Many were killed. I can't stop thinking about you. You spent 5 years of your teens in the ghetto and in Nazi camps, and you arrived here only to face daily dangers again. How tragic. I must finish this letter. I hear the loudspeaker outside. Ben-Gurion is announcing the establishment of the State of Israel. Shmulik, I started this letter in Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and I'm finishing it in Medinat Israel, the State of Israel, with all my love, Bilha. That's the letter. I had a little added to that in the end. Listen. With amazement and wonder, I reflect upon these years of 1947-48, when the young of my generation were glowing with optimism and sense of pride in being the privileged, which has delivered the state, the Jewish state, to the nation on a silver platter, in the words of the great poet Nathan Alterman. Yeah, are you on now?
Yeah, you want.
I want to tell you, in Yarkona, in my village, in Kfar Malal, in Kfar Saba, all our area, so many young men died. 7 boys were killed in the war in 48. You know, I wrote a story about the monuments that put in their name. I can read from a story about this monument, just a little section. I mean, when we were little children, we saw that there are some stones sticking out, big stone. I tell you, you can see the painting made from that stones. Big monument. I have many photographs. I have a lot of photographs about everything. And we tried to dig and dig and dig, and it got bigger and bigger. I'm telling you, each one is bigger than the size of this couch you're sitting on. See, and we never got to the bottom of this stone. And that was 1948. All of us went to the war, and especially the boys were fighting everywhere, and so many were killed. And so after the war, they thought, how are they going to remember their names? They want to put a monument. They decided to dig that stone. They brought bulldozer, to dig it out with machines, and they dug out, and they see this big stone, and underneath another one, 2 big stones. As children, we always said, what these stones? Was it an altar for the Canaanite? Was it a monument for some soldiers? What was it? Did it come from the stars, from the moon? What is stone? It was a lot of legend. We play games about. Everybody was imagining. Tzvika, all these kids that were killed, they were imagining what this stone is. You know, Tamar, my friend, was killed also. And you know, when they found the 2 stones out, they found coins from the 1st century. Roman coin. I have one of them. I have one coin. When I speak sometime about Jewish history and I talk the 1st century, it drives me crazy. I always feel like I lived there. I bring this coin. I say, I feel like I lived in the 1st century because this village was a village. People. I don't know if the Jews lived there because it's a Roman coins. And so they put these 2 monuments. I just was in Israel. I stayed in Yarkona. My brother still lives there. And I go to visit these stones. And you see on one stone the name of all the boys that killed in Yarkona, in Israel during the wars, different wars. And on the other one, next to it, there is another monument, the same size, with all the settlers in the Moshav as they died. If they died, they put their names there. They didn't bury them. There is a cemetery. And the last one was my father. He was the oldest one and the last one to die. So all of them, I told you, only 35 families. In the cemetery, they're all buried there, all of them. Okay, so when I told you.
So let's just go. We'll go to the end of the war.
At the end of the war, in 1948, it's the end of the war.
So how did you...
And the immigrants coming, and the main thing was to take care of the immigrants.
So how did the war end?
The war ended that the Jews claimed all the land that the United Nations gave them, plus a little bit more. The United Nations had an emergency meeting for a ceasefire, And in that meeting, there were decision that was fought tooth and nails. There was at that time American representative, his name was Goldberg, and he was a representative of United States and the United Nations, and they were fighting. Oh no, I'm sorry, that happened later. No, I'm mixing now another war, and the 6 Days War.
Okay.
I'm mixing another war. I'm going back. Yeah, when the war ended, there was a ceasefire. It was a meeting on the island of Rhodes, and just a ceasefire, not real peace. The war, the attack on Israel was from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Jordan, from Saudi Arabia, and from Egypt. From all the nations, from all the five, they came with their armies. The Egyptians came with planes. The Iraqis came, and the Jordanians were under control of the British. They trained them. So Israel wants a little bit more, and they celebrated the state of Israel. And if the Arabs would accept that, we would have peace. See, but I told you that Saudi Arabians said even 2 million will die. We will not accept a Jewish entity there. They say the same words today. Today Trump has some plan. They did not announce it yet. They say, no way. We will not accept any Jewish entity on this whole land. It's our land, and they have to go away from there. Go from the land where they came from. That's why you cannot come to any kind of place, so many places. I come back to the end of the war. The main thing was the immigrants. The British left. We had to face the Palestinian fights. Those that left as refugees, like 600,000 of them, they were in camps. They sit in camps. They never, and in the roads, they could have come if there will be peace, but they did not want to accept. And there was no way they will accept anything, any kind of peace, because they always believed that eventually they will be able to dislodge these small, crazy Jews that live there. So when immigrants started to come, and then you need to teach them, and you need to feed them, and they come with so many languages. So the first thing, Ben-Gurion was our leader, and he said, we have to change the names. So we will not have names would be from Polish and Russian and this and German, and let's try to give them names like in the Bible. So my husband Sam, we were married already, we have a baby, we changed the name from Shmuel Rakovsky to Shmuel Ron. Ron, because there was no connection between Rakovsky, Rakov means rotten, so we couldn't call Rakov. Some names you could go. Ben-Gurion changed his name from, his name was Green, he called Ben-Gurion. Shertok called himself Sharet. Golda Meirson called herself Meir. Everybody changed their names to try to have the same names. And the main thing was nursing and doctors and they don't home to live. Nobody lived on the street. They give them tent. They give them, and they start to build homes, very small homes, but it will be 2 bedrooms. It was only $2,000. American money started to come. Jewish people started to send money, and near us, I told you that the Arabs, Orange Grove was near us. The Arabs ran away. The Orange Grove, suddenly they start to have Jewish community around us. There is no question, that was the story. That is the story. And they would come to buy, all these immigrants will come to buy in our little grocery store in the Moshav. They built other Moshavim all around us. But we still were 10 miles. The border was 10 miles between the Mediterranean Sea and Jordan, and the border was 10 miles. It's still there, The West Bank starts 10 miles from the sea. That's where Yarkona is. You understand? It's a little strip like that. That's when I became a teacher in Yahud, and that's another story about how it was.
The Arabs that had to leave,
yes,
because now that part was Israel.
Yes.
Were they offered money to leave?
They ran away because the announcement was for them, if don't block the road, the army coming from Iraq and from Syria and this, we need the roads, you have to go away, and they were encouraged because within a month or two we will kill out these Jews. Mm-hmm. So most of them ran away. Some of them, Israel really attacked them because it was war. It was war. And then after that, until today, many sit in camp and they still say they want to go back to their homes. Their homes are gone. There are villages here and there. But money was collected to compensate them someday when there will be peace. It's still, there is peace with Egypt, there is peace with Jordan, peace with the Palestinians is still a dream.
Today there's over 1 million Arabs that live in Israel that are
1.5 million Arabs remain in the land. I mean,
they were the remnants,
they never became refugees, they remained within Israel. See, they multiply so fast. Mm-hmm. They call themselves 6 million Arab for Palestinian, you know. They are in Gaza, they are in, I can't go into the politics now.
The ones that are Israeli citizens.
There are 1.5 million citizens, equal right Palestinian, they are in the Knesset, there are 10 of them in the Knesset. They are now big issue because of the coalition.
Are they the descendants of the people that were there?
Yes, they never left. They never left. They stayed in Jerusalem. They stayed in Akko. They stayed in wherever they stayed. They remained. If they didn't leave, they stayed. Mm-hmm. If they left. They remain in refugee camps.
So you became what happened after the war? What did you become?
I told you I was teaching, and then when I married, and then I had a child, and the same.
What year did you get married?
In 1949. That's 70 years now.
So you met your husband
I met
he was a patient in the hospital?
I met him before that, but next to my village there was another kibbutz, a small. It was not even a kibbutz, a transit camp by the Jewish Agency for immigrants. They just came in. They lived there, waiting to get some land from Jewish National Fund.
Where did he immigrate from?
He's from Poland. The people in his group were some Poland, some from Romania, one Israeli.
What camps was he in?
Oh, so many. I cannot get to that story. He will tell you himself. Okay. He came from near Krakow. Mm-hmm. He came from a town called Kazimierz-Wielka. I went to visit the place with him. He has a big story, monumental story.
So you met him, and
I met the group. I met him when I was 16 years old, because I was so embedded in this Israeli literature. I would go volunteer to teach Hebrew. Even I was going to Teachers College, to Seminar Levinsky in Tel Aviv. But in the weekend, every Friday, they will come and pick me up, and I will come to that kibbutz. That's about 3-4 miles away from us. And I remember I would read to them poems from Bialik, and talk about this Jewish history. I don't know, I just volunteered to be working with them. And I was 16 and they were all 20. They were aged from 17 to 25.
This was 1946?
1946. And Sam was one of their leaders. I met him, and I met the others. And then
what did you think of him when you first met him?
He was very handsome, and I was, I don't know. When I remember when he came on a white horse. They worked in our farms, and it was August. And he came with a horse. Here's a picture in his room. He will take it before you leave. You'll see the picture.
He came on a horse.
On a white horse to guard our vineyard. We had a vineyard with grapes. And during the month of August, immigrant kids that were in a youth aliyah school would come from Magdiel. They would steal grapes and watermelon from the field. So we needed, like, for a month or 6 weeks to have some guard. He was guarding. And I would come and sit with him. And I will ask him all the time, tell me about the war. Tell me what was the Holocaust like. tell me that I don't think at that time we called it even Shoah. We didn't have the word Holocaust, Shoah. We just tell me what was it like. And he didn't want to talk about it. All he talked about his work with the illegal immigration, how he brought kids and how he came to Israel with all these kids, and he had such a, he just wouldn't talk about it. And we were just friends. We did not romanticize. Only after he was wounded. When they went to settle in the Negev, I went with them. Being 16, 17 years old, girl, 17 that time, because they made for me a big birthday and they gave me as a gift, I still have it here, all the writing with Bialik. And they wrote for your birthday, you know, for your 17th birthday, from the Kibbutz Ha'ofek. I went with them when they went to settle in the Negev. We went through Beersheba, it's south of Beersheba, and there was a big sandstorm, and the sand covered us. We were an open truck. About 20 people we were going there to start to build that new place. We were covered with sand. You did not see who is boy, is girl. All you see is shiny eyes. We were just covered with sand, a real sandstorm. And we come to a very desert, you saw nothing. Here you have to build your home. His picture from just this place as they landed. There was one building there, some from bricks, I don't know how, from where it is, but it was just one. And before we came, there was a few huts, like, and it was Passover, and I was teaching the girls how to prepare for Pesach. I was the big macher. Can you imagine?
You were 16.
17. And you see, I told you, they were attacked right away after that. They were attacked, and Sam was in a hospital. I started to visit him, and he came back to the hospital in Tel Aviv, and then he came back to that kibbutz near us, and he started to come every day until he was better, healed. They made him a driver of a huge armored truck, Canadian armored truck. That was, he came to date me with this truck. I had to climb up like this. That was so high. And he takes me and we started to be like, at our time, I tell you, if you kiss, you think you marry already. Right, I never had anybody else in my life, except Sam. So it was like, we were already like not engaged. And in the letter, I write him all the time, I don't know where our friendship will go. I don't know. I have another pack of letters.
Why did he keep these letters?
Maybe he loved me. I mean, the letters, I tell you, the letters are so interesting. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Every letter here. Some of them I dated, you know. Here it says Yom Aleph Tammuz. I have to look to figure out what year, what it was. Tammuz, it doesn't say the year, you see, but it's all the same time. It's all the same, because I tell what I do. And then I have another pack of letters that were from 1950, when he was still in the army. And, you know, they never counted the time that he was wounded and the time that he was in a kibbutz, defending that kibbutz. Only the time when he was officially in the army. When I was in the army, there was no Israeli army. We were just, that's before the state. I understand? It was such everything. The school where I was teaching in Yahud in 1950, we didn't have books, we didn't have papers, we didn't have, and I was teaching in a school that used to be an Arab school, because the Arabs ran away from Yahud. Can you imagine? I have such stories about it. That's why I have a story about this teaching in that school. And the story is amazing stories. None of the children knew Hebrew. I am 19 years old, 1949, 50, 19 years old. How would I teach kids that don't know Hebrew? How did I manage? It's a whole story by itself.
How did you do that?
I have to read to you the story of I wrote about it. How I managed, what help I got. I mean, there's a lot to tell about it. I cannot just...
These children are refugees?
All refugees, and I'll tell you, they were 20...
Maybe they speak Yiddish? Maybe they
no,
speak Yiddish.
they were kids. One Yemenite, little girl, she knew nothing. She was never educated in any way, and it was fifth grade, never learned to read or write or anything. And there was one boy from Germany, very, very smart, knew arithmetic but didn't know Hebrew. In 3 months they spoke Hebrew. There were 10 from Bulgaria. There were 4 from Poland. They were mixed from all over. And they lived in Yehud, which used to be a Jewish village in Bible time. That's why it's called Yehud, Yehudim, Jews. You
don't have books, right?
What?
You don't have books.
I did not have books.
And you have to talk to them in Hebrew.
I did not have books, so
all these people are learning this language and they don't know what you're talking about.
So what did I do? I have to tell you that's a story. I used to take them in my hand and go out. It's a village. Now it's a big city. It's a village. I took them out to the field. I taught them to speak and to recognize the trees and the water and these, and to learn to talk. And I told them Bible stories.
You had no books. You had no pictures.
Okay, so I didn't have books. So I go to my school in Kfar Malal. And I go to the teacher, Pnina, that was teaching 4th grade, 5th grade. I said, Pnina, have the children that finish their books, bring the books for us. And she brought to me, I had 25 kids, she brought 15 books, not 25, 15 books, because I have 2 levels. I have 4th and 5th grade in one room. Crazy. So I had 2 different levels. So I got the 15 books. I have that story, the whole story, called Miko Gulio, because Miko was a leader of the Bulgarian. He was a kid, he didn't have front teeth, he talks like that. And Gulio means shaved head. His head was shaved because he had a lot of lice. So his parents shaved this. Very backward family from Bulgaria. I mean, the other kids were very smart. He was different. He was really a bandit, he was a wild kid. And
you know what happened to his parents? Did they ever tell you what happened to their parents, these children?
It was very good questions, I'm telling you. So I brought the children from Kfar Malal, wrote 25 letters. Israeli letters right to the new immigrants. Very simple letters in a simple language. Shalom, my friend, my friend, I'm happy you came to this land, to Israel. I would like to be your friend. Send me pictures. Very simple language that I could, they were learning, kids learn fast. When they came to class, maybe they were already 2 or 3 months in the summertime, running around in the town, in the village. So when I brought the letters, I gave to everyone a letter, and then I had books, only 15 books. I was showed 10 books to the Bulgarian kids that were older. They were older kids, they needed another set of books. I tried to explain to them, this is a story I wrote about, it was so important. I told them that I will need 2 more weeks before they will finish to read those books, and I'll bring to them the other 10. That Miko, I told you, he stood up and he spoke in Bulgarian. I didn't know what to say. He took the letter that I gave him and he tore it into little pieces and he threw it under the chair. And he told them in Bulgarian to throw the letters. And they all took the letters and they crumpled like that and threw under. And then he said to me like this, Mora, אין ספרים, יש אבנים. Mora, teacher, there are no books, there are stones. He runs outside and he starts to throw stones to the class. Stones. I can leave you in that. I'm just telling you. What do? You want to know what happened, right? So the bell rang, it was lunchtime. We go outside the schoolyard. There was a big stone, like I told you in Yarkona, it was a big stone like this. I don't know what it is, where it came from, huge, big stone. And the kids were outside and I see him there standing. I sat on the stones and I called him like this, Miko, Boina, come here. He thought, he's used to be beaten by his parents a lot. I know that because they came one time and the mother took the shoe and says, hit him on the head with the shoe when he misbehaved. She didn't know Hebrew either, but she showed me the shoe, what to do. So I called him, so he kind of was afraid, you know, and the kids were standing in a big circle. When he came in, I started to explain to him. I said, sit down. I tried to explain to him in a very basic language that I had to choose between taking the 15 books or wait for 2 more weeks without books for anybody until I have for everyone. I tried to explain to him that if he was in my place, what would he do? I say, you see, without books, we don't know what to do. I mean, it's so hard because we need the books. It's arithmetic, they knew that these kids were very smart and they learned before. So arithmetic I could give them, they knew what to do. And I taught them language. So he was listening to me, and I did not hit him or ask him I never hit any kid, but I did not even aggressively punish him in any way. What would you do? So he's thinking, and he said, Mora, I take the books. And he runs, he said, Mora, chaki, rega, wait for me. And he runs to the class and he brings a handful of the torn papers. He gives this torn paper and he said, fix this letter, michtav. And he wants the letter. I could easily do it, but I didn't want to do it. I wanted to give him a little bit suffering from this. I can't do that, but I can do one thing for you. I know who wrote to you, and I still remember. His name was Karmi, the boy from Kfar Malal, his name was Karmi. I still remember that because it's so etched in my memory. You know, the children, they did not tear their papers. Eventually I brought books for everyone, and I brought them notebooks and pencils, and they learned so well, and they were so good, and that boy was such a good leader for the class. In the end of the year we made a show with a play, and the class decided what they want to play, and they loved the Bible. I was such a good teacher for Bible, and we dramatized everything in the field. I cannot describe to you how we made the war in Jericho, how we made the war on Ai, how we made the story of the Jews dancing around the golden calf. I mean, we dramatized everything outside. And so decided they want to put a play. What play? What they voted? They voted the story of Deborah, the prophetess Deborah, because she's a woman leader, and you don't know the story, so I can't go through the story. But she was a judge. So as a judge, and they say in the Bible that she sat under a palm tree. So they made a palm tree from cut up things, and they made a palm tree, and they had to choose who will be Deborah, and there is a big battle, and she's supposed to be the leader of the battle, and she said, you need a man to lead the battle, and they choose Miko to be the leader, Barak. Barak was the name in the Bible. They chose him, and he made himself costume. And they put a play for the parents. The parents didn't know any Hebrew, but they could not believe. They sang songs, they danced. It was such a big victory. After the school, at last day of school, I go with all my papers. I am pregnant already, like this, and I wait for a bus to go home. It's a bus that says to Petah Tikva. In Petah Tikva, I have to take another bus to Yarkona. I stand, a limousine, it's not a limousine, a big black car stops. Now you think I'm bluffing, but I'm not bluffing. I stopped car, and I said, you need a ride. It's Golda Meir sitting in the car. Golda Meir. Golda Meir sitting in the car. She's not that, she has a driver. She sits in the back. Where you want to go? I say, Yarkona. I said, I go to Haifa. She said, come in, sit down. I sit next to her. I admired her. She was at that time labor minister. Ben Gurion was the prime minister. She was labor minister. It was 1950. Well, I said I wanted so much for her to ask me about how it's to teach in Yehud, about the class. Your teacher, I see, it's the last day, what you did, who are the kids. She just sat the whole time thinking, did not say one word to me. It was a half-hour ride, maybe more. It's more from Yehud, maybe 40 minutes. She did not say one word. She was not reading, talking on anything, nothing. Just thinking. I read her son wrote a book. I spoke about Golda Meir. I gave talks about Ben Gurion, Arik Sharon. I gave talks about Golda Meir. And so I read books about them. I have many books in my shelf about this, just to learn more than what I know. Mm-hmm. And in the book, her son wrote that time when I was waiting, by the date that he described, her husband, she was separated from him, but he was dying in Haifa. Mm. So he says she was going and described the car, the black car. And he says in the letter that she picked up people, and he says that she used to talk to them. She didn't talk to me now. When she came to Yarkona, I opened the door, I came out and I said, Golda, I said, Golda, you are really my hero. I wish you, I just said something from my heart to her. I think maybe we should stop, no?
Okay.
It's enough. I know what to say.
You say you forgot to mention there was an event that happened in someone that you knew as a young person was murdered near where you lived when you were around 20 years old. So tell me about that.
You're talking about the Tamar, this girl, or before that? All the boys were killed.
The girl.
Yeah, that's Tamar. You want me to tell about this?
Yeah.
It's on now. You have it on?
It's on, yes.
Okay. I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. I mentioned before that when Golda Meir, I did not talk on this thing about Golda Meir. I told you.
It was recorded, the Golda Meir. That was recorded.
It was?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, at that time, it's interesting. One evening came a girl that was a year younger than I am. Her name was Tamar, and she said that they are going to send her to teach also immigrant children in the Galil. And she heard that I had big success teaching in Yahud. And she said, why don't you tell me what you have done to teach them when they didn't know the language? And I sat with her and I told her what I did and what helped me through that time. And she said goodbye, and she had a boyfriend, and he waited for her outside, and she went out. That night, I heard about 2 o'clock at night, the bells in the center of the moshav were ringing and everybody was running out. That means emergency, something happened. We all go in and we hear something happened. Tamar Oren was killed tonight. She was with her boyfriend in the Orange Grove, and the Fadayin, that time they called them terrorists, Fadayin, they were going to steal something, or they saw them and they shot both of them. She died, and he lived. He lived, and they just brought her body to the family, to their parents. She had a twin brother, and they were twins. They were so always hand in hand to go together. She was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now do a little summary.
So now I want to summarize what I talked, and then I had my child 2 months later, and I called her Tamar, after Tamar Oren, my friend that was killed just then. But now I talked about 20 years of my life, from the time I was born in Ra'anana, I lived in Yarkona, and all the war that happened, Israel became a state, and teaching. It really was a foundation for my life. I don't think that I changed my views about the world, about myself, about family life. It's amazing that I remained also with dedication to Israel. Even my life moved me to United States. My heart, my thought, I know what's happening in Israel as if I'm there all the time, because I'm leading a book club of Israelis for 17 years, of all Israeli, and I choose the books and I facilitate most of the books. And they are started in my home, and we had 80 people that would come. Now we have regular people that coming, 30 people come to our book club. In the past month, since I live in this independent living, I gave this role to lead this group to a friend, to somebody younger that can start to do it. But my love for literature, my teaching Hebrew, I was principal of a Hebrew school, And I finished another college in the United States, which was a Catholic college, a Jesuit college, and I was selected the distinguished alumni of that university, Walsh University in Kenton, Ohio. We lived in Ohio. I was also dedication to the Holocaust. I was by Governor Celeste of Ohio chose me to be one to write and be a part of the Council of Holocaust Education, where one of the people that wrote curriculum for the state of Ohio. I advocated for Israel, not for money. I never charged for my lectures, as I don't do now. Even people offered me no matter what, because that was my duty, that was my vocation, to do something for Israel. I spoke in the churches in Ohio. People knew me because I thought that Goyim should learn something about Israel. The human organization, women organization, asked me 7 times in every year. I used to speak on a topic every year for many gentle clubs, from the Rotary to the Women's Club to all kinds, churches. I was called What is New on the Israeli Bookshelves. Every year I went to Israel, and now just 3 months ago, I'm almost 90 years old. I'm 89, and we still just came from Israel. My brother still lives in Yarkona. My other brother lives in another moshav. My brother Isreal. We have 3 children. We have 4 grandchildren. We have 1 great-grandchild. But I don't think that I changed from the time with my teacher, Moshe Schlanger, was teaching me about the Bible, about literature, about poetry. I still love poetry, English, Hebrew, whatever poetry. We have a poet that lives here in Valencia in the Sinai residence. And every poet he writes, he brings me. Every book he published, he gives, because he knows I understand poetry. This is the first time that made a film of me, of my story. And I wrote many, many stories, and sometimes I wanted to put it in the book. And I negotiated with some people that maybe will help me to put it in a. There are several books that were 3 books made by my brother about Yarkona and about our family and about us too. It's a very common thing that Israelis that live through this high drama time, they just feel they must put a record to it. Maybe eventually, before I die, I will see a book made from all these stories. You saw how many stories I have, and some of it I have already. I took with Sam, he took me to Poland with him. When we were married for 40 years, now it's 70 years, but at 40 he said, how should we celebrate? I said, there is nothing better than take me down to Poland, to where you were born, but I want to see every place, all the way. I read so many books about the Shoah. I have so many books before the Shoah that I read about life. I want to see, and so I wrote a journal and a tape. I had 27 hours of tapes, that interview with people that on the trip. It was a 2-week trip. Every place, I go on the road and I say, I want to go here to Radom. I want to go here to Pinchov. I want to go here. Every place, if I see a forest, I want to see, because I read a book that Jews were hiding in that forest. Could you hide in that forest? I looked and went to his village, where he was, the house where he was born. I want to meet the people. I wrote a journal. It's 125 pages typed. So this I have a journal. Not a real book, but it's a book. You could call it a book, but it just typed. It's like a home type book, but 125 pages about the journal of every place where we stopped. We met people that were good to his family and bad to his family. We met people, and we went to Krakow, and we went to Warsaw, and every place, including the camps later on, Plaszów. My life is so full of drama, you can't believe. Last night, I can't stop telling stories. Last night we had dinner with 3 couples from Kenton, Ohio, that knew me from Kenton. There were just some living here, some visiting. And they brought me a book that said to Bilha, dedicated by the writer. Because I worked with the Russian, and they came, to Israel as to Kenton as immigrants, and I helped to settle them. And so they sent me this book written by this woman. I looked at this book, and I see that mention about about her father, her husband that lived that was in a camp in Europe in Pyeonggi. Sam was in Pyeonggi. I was with Sam to visit the place. I was so excited that here somebody, not many Jews survived from Camp Pyeonggi. Sam was one, and maybe 5 Jews survived from Pyeonggi. And here this book tells about Pyeonggi. I gave it to Sam. He said, wow, I can't stop reading. This today, not yesterday, right today, I gave him this book to look. There is so much. We have drama every day. The good thing and not so good things. Here in Sinai residence, we live in independent living. I teach Bible. In 2 weeks, I teach about Samuel, how God called Samuel to become a leader. A month later, it would be about how the Jewish people asked to be king. They want a king. They come, we want to be better organized, like all the other nations. What is it that all this, we need a king. I teach them, and I remember the way I learned it. Honestly, like I see the class. So that foundation that I had in Israel is with me, and love of writing, love of reading, love of Israel, love of the Jewish people, love of Jewish history, loving a philosopher, a historian, that I'm crazy about. I have all his writing. Here, I'll show you before you leave my library. You'll find 10 volumes of Josephus Flavius. I'm sure you never heard of him. But I cannot finish a conversation without telling something. I cannot teach something in the Bible without something. What Josephus Flavius told you about that. He lived in the 1st century, 2,200 years ago. And he wrote all these volumes, Antiquities of the Jews, and the Jews fight a war against Rome. Jewish people here, nobody heard of him. I read it regularly. What he writes about this, what he writes about Samuel, how God called him, what he enlarged and what he squeezes. Why he tells this one in detail and one there, no. What is purpose? I mean, you don't know about him, and I don't want to start because I will not stop. But you see, where did I learn? In my 7th grade, my teacher Moshe Schlanger made a trial for this historian because the Jews considered him a traitor. And because he kind of collaborated with the Romans at a certain point after he lost, he was a commander in the Galilee. When he was captured, he tried to plead with the Jews of Jerusalem not to fight Rome because Rome is too strong and they will destroy you. So there was a trial in the school. I was the defender, okay? I was defending Josephus Flavius, and I still do. I still do, and he's now, they don't need me. Everybody knows that he's one of the greatest historians of all time. He maybe lied here and there. How did they know? They didn't have television. We don't know who killed Kennedy. How do we know exactly what happened? So he writes Jewish history, and he writes what, I don't want to start on it. I'm just telling you, coming back to the summary. The summary is the foundation of that little school in Kfar Malal. I went to Teachers College in Tel Aviv. I don't talk about that. I learned to be a teacher, but I knew already how to be a teacher. I learned from Moshe Schlanger. I wish he would be alive, that he will know what I talk about him. But he died, he was an older man. I was in love with him. It was my first love. He was so ugly, with big glasses, and he was a heavy man, and I was 16, I was 10 years old, 11, 12, 13. But he was like my idol. See, so that's it. I think I gave you enough for 1 hour. If you come another week, I will tell you more stuff, because teaching in America is another story. How I teach here for so many years, what my experience with children. In 1 week in Akron, Ohio, I will teach 160 Jewish children from little one to high school. How did I see them grow? It's 50 years. How I see them go, what becomes of them, what I try to give them, and what did they get from me? One supervisor came to my class, and she said to me, I don't know how much these kids will remember the Hebrew that you teach them, but I know for sure they will remember this teacher with the blue eyes and blue dress. They remember me, and I still see them everywhere. They are spread all over the country. I had so many students for so many years in Akron and Canton. Then I was the head of the school. When I retired, I was working for Jewish Federation as Jewish education specialist. I told you I was working on the Holocaust curriculum and did a lot of stuff with survivors in Holocaust together with Sam. And the school, going to school, to Catholic school, be one Jew, how I defended Judaism there. And they chose me to be the distinguished alumni. What an honor that is. From all the many honors that I have, that's the most, the one I am more proud.
What was it called again?
I'll show you the plaque. Distinguished alumni of the university.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I was once a Jewish student. What I wrote to them always explained how Christianity separated from Judaism. I used to call it the parting of the way, and how and I have the New Testament. They gave me as a gift in Hebrew the whole Christian Bible, which has the Old Testament and the New Testament in Hebrew.
In Hebrew.
See, and I tell them, the Old Testament is the story of our people, the tale of the Jewish people. The New Testament is a document for the prosecution. It's during the parting of the way. It's a document for prosecution. The story of all the dayside. Jesus was a Jewish man. He died like a Jew, like 1,000 other Jews. I tell them in class. I discuss stuff in this textbook. I say, look what I read. Did you see what you read here? You read in our textbook, and who is teaching us? They're all in color, priests, And I said, look, we just read this. The Jewish people, they were God's people, but on condition that they behave, If they start to swear and start to believe in idols and so forth, I'll punish them. Okay, the book says, and he punished them, and he chose from that tree, he cut that tree and he planted another tree. And that is the New Testament, and that's a Christian. I said, so how come the Jewish people all over the world, they remain Jews? How come they're building Israel now as a new state? How dare one religion say the other one became irrelevant and cut off? How you see? If you cut off, you mean it died? It didn't die. We are all alive. I saw them coming from Yemen, from Ethiopia, from Romania, from Poland, from everywhere, from Morocco, from Spain, from everywhere. No matter what anybody, the Christian tried to kill them all the time. Mm-hmm. I said the survivors from Holocaust, they make children and babies, and there are new generations. So they took it out from their book, not by what I say. Now they don't have it. That was happened. The Catholic had another. They changed the books. They are not teaching this anymore, and the Catholic is different. Well, that's all for now.